And welcome to the Flicks Picks, to the Nitpicks, and I am your humble host, S02EP13. And it's been a while since we did one of these, but we gotta do reviews, and we gotta do the film. Well, film special, however you want to call it, Power Rangers, once and always. So let's get right to it. So we just gonna touch, before I get into my non-spoiler, we're gonna read like the opening that's on Netflix, so at least you could know a little bit about the flick before we get into the picks and nitpicks. So without further ado, this is directly from the first page of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always on Netflix. A sacrifice sets the Rangers on their most personal journey yet, leading them to learn the true meaning of the mantra, once a Ranger, always a Ranger. Starring David Yost, Walter Emmanuel Jones, Catherine Sutherland, Steve Cardenas, and Charlie Kirsch. So, and it's also directed by Charlie Haskell. So we're gonna get right to it, man. I seen it. I enjoyed it. In my non-spoiler review, because I'm gonna have to cut this up, I'm gonna get right to it. It was a good special for Power Rangers, I cannot lie, you know what I mean? And we'll get into the picks and the nitpicks later, but it was a more up-to-date, mature version of what we've already seen prior. I'm talking, you still got the cheese in there. You still got the one-liners and things of that nature. But one thing I found very cool with it, it was, let's just, before we even get into the Ranger stuff, all the character moments that you would see outside of costume was shot almost like a soap opera if you paid attention to it. It had this kind of, I don't know, like, it's hard to explain, because even the film footage obviously was digital, but it just way better, crisper. I mean, we got better, we could shoot this better. And we've seen this in the later episodes of Power Rangers. But I think this was something a little bit more different. I've watched some of the newer Power Rangers stuff, but to me, a lot of it still harkens back to old school Power Rangers, which isn't a bad thing. This is what made the franchise thrive as long as it did. But here, it wasn't like that Ranger film that was rated R type of mature. Again, it was very soap opera-esque in how they filmed a lot of the inter-character moments, how the camera was just placed, a lot of it just, and how they interacted. I don't know, it just read a lot from soap operas to me, and in how it's shot, you know. But with that being said, because we're dealing with a more mature subject matter, explaining the real life death of Tui Trang as her character Trini, and saying that she passed, being basically a hero for the Power Rangers, and when she loses her life, how the Rangers have to deal with that as they introduce her daughter into the series as well, and trying to find the balance of explaining to the daughter who they are as Power Rangers, what one being once a Ranger, always a Ranger, once and always, and what it means to the team, especially 30 years out from when they were recruited as teenagers, and with all the hinting of all Rangers that existed, because it's in the special, hinting at other Ranger teams, what that could mean to the daughter Min, Trini's daughter Min, and what that means to them. and all the history that connects all of them to that. How Trini dies and how she has to deal with it within the realm of learning that her mother was a Power Ranger, and how she has to deal with the emotional journey of that. And we get a lot of harking backs to the original series. There's definitely a lot of remember berries for you to pick throughout it. But most importantly, it's still Power Rangers aged in the right kind of manner to suit the audience where we're at now, and still be inviting to kids of that age when we started watching it back then. And if that was the aim, I think they did a marvelous job. I do wish they could beefen up the maturity of the film a little bit more, of the series a little bit more moving forward. Not saying that we have to have death and stuff like that, like on screen per se. What I mean is sometimes a lot of these character moments that they did have, it moved way too fast, and that may be because of the film was shorter. It was 55 minutes, so we get right into it from the very beginning as soon as we open, and they use an adequate amount of flashbacks to kind of fill in certain gaps that we needed to move this story forward. And for those that wish they got enough information about where they've been these past 30 years, instead of, if not for a line here and there, we're still not exactly sure what's been up with Billy and Zach. We know that Billy's been in Aquitar, and they at least let that be known in the film, in the special, but they're not really beholden to giving you anything concrete, because this was not the story to tell. The story was about how Trini passes and how they deal with that while she's not only in mourning, but trying to figure out what that means to her, losing her mother and knowing that she's a Power Ranger. And like I said, they could have got a lot more in depth with certain things, but we'll get into the picks and the nitpicks later. But overall, you will enjoy the ride getting there, especially, like I said, it brings you right back into the action in such an up-to-date feel. I wish they could have poured a little bit more money into it, as well as, like I said, it moves so fast that there were moments that they could have let breathe, and if they'd have done it right, they could have brought more emotional value to it, since they're dealing with an emotional story. And that was the thing that I thought, that it should have been a little bit more emotional. Like I said, it goes by fast, so they have to give you a lot moving it forward. And because they do that, certain moments didn't breathe enough, and it took away from some of the action, which we'll get into my picks and the nitpicks. But I think that if you came into this wanting to almost come back home, come back to that nostalgia when you was a kid, I think you will at least enjoy this next flick series, if for nothing else, for that. Now, let's get on to the sport.